1069. Let's hear what you got to say.
Thank you, Senator. And at first, let me start off with I'm accepting the amendments numbered 6 and 7 that are contained in the analysis. And let me be clear on this Airbnb issue. It wasn't my intent to allow Airbnb to be in every location. On the other hand, it wasn't my intention, and it's not my intention to restrict Airbnb. This bill has. That decision is going to be in some other very important bill. What I'm trying to draw some attention to is the unaffordability of housing in California and how the renters in California, the rent has gone up 50%. It's a significant factor for the reason that we have high housing costs is because we do not have enough housing stock. Accessory dwelling units, ADUs, are going to be part of that solution. ADUs are additional living spaces on single-family lots that have a separate kitchen, a bathroom, exterior access to the independent primary residence. If just 10% of the housing stock in the Bay Area where I live had ADUs, we would have an additional 150,000 rentals. However, homeowners are prevented. This bill modestly goes after some of them. There's all kinds of impact fees and requirements that local governments have put on or adopted to prevent it. And if you look back at the committee's analysis, we started on this road 30 years ago, trying to say, let's get some more second units. 12 years ago, in 2002, we adopted another one that said we really want to have second units to meet our housing crisis. And what's happened is local governments have very cleverly put in impediments, because I would ask every senator to go back into their district, call up the planning director and say, in the last 10 years, how many of these second units have we built? None. It's like 1 and 2 in every unit, although we as a state have said this is an important addition. So it's a critical step, SB 1069, to easing the barriers for construction and encouraging the homeowner. Bring back home rule. Let the homeowner, we're redefining what their land means, what their plot means, and if they want to put in a renter and have an accessory unit within their garage or within their house, they have a right to do it. It's ministerial action. I will let my proponents go into the details of how we're going to ease these barriers on 1069, because I know everybody's time is.
Okay. Can I say, you're right, this has been around a long time. Congressman Cardoza, then Chairman of the Rules Committee Cardoza in the Central Valley, really focused on this stuff. I just think it has, beyond there's so many social benefits in terms of creating cohesiveness in communities, or they call them granny flats or relatives or in-laws. How would I have loved to put my in-laws in a separate building?
I was joking that everybody is the king of his castle, and I said, not at my house. I'm not
me.
Anything.
It was my mother-in-law. But in any event, we just real briefly before you go on, because we discussed this, and I had this case 35 years ago in Los Angeles, this ability, this tendency of the utilities to hold these hookup charges, so that if I were to add a second bathroom in my own house, it's one thing, but if I were to make a second unit, it's $85,000. As they say in Yiddish, a Lochenkopf, a hole in your head.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that, sir?
Well, no, what we're going to do is we want to define it as the home, the regular home. It's an accessory. So I just did in addition to my house, Sue and I put another bathroom in. That would have cost me, if we would have done it as a separate unit, it would have cost us $75,000 in my town for the privilege of doing this, and we still only built 440 square feet, right? And that's the trick that we have, is that we're redefining that it's an accessory unit, so it's part of the entitlement that you get when you bought your 4,000 or 5,000 or 6,000 or 10,000 square foot lot, that you have an absolute right ministerially to go in and do that. Now, if you do want to get a separate, PG&E or Southern Edison box, you got to pay for it, right? I'm not saying that, but if they're plugged into your utilities, that barrier is hopefully removed.
Good. Excellent. Please.
I'll be brief. My name is Denise Day job, I work for an infill real estate development company in the Bay Area. And
Ooh, which one?
TMG Partners. Okay. And I'm here because this is what affordable housing in the Bay Area looks like today. People are living in tiny homes on wheels on the public street.
You're showing photographs of mobile homes parked on the street,
Yeah,
motorhomes.
This is where affordable housing
Campers.
is being built in Mountain View today. And as a result, you received our letters, a wide coalition of statewide employers, business groups, equity groups, people who are concerned with affordable housing.
Take it on my street.
Are alarmed beyond belief that they cannot hang on to employees. There are folks, particularly middle-income workers and low-income workers, who have to keep their Bay Area jobs and don't have the option of leaving the state, as many companies are doing in droves to find affordable housing. Those folks are stuck in 2- and 3-hour commutes each way from places like Modesto commuting to Mountain View. And so it's for that reason that this unusual group of supporters is appealing to the state to please re-clarify your intent with the Second Unit Enabling Act, which stated 14 years ago that homeowners should be able to build accessory dwellings with a building permit, and that obstacles to those accessory dwellings were supposed to be removed by local governments and haven't been. And then with me is Christina Lawson.
Good morning. My name is Christina Lawson. I'm a land use attorney with Manat, Phelps & Phillips. I'm also the former mayor of Walnut Creek, where I served both as mayor on the city council and then prior to that service on the city's planning commission. Unfortunately, the housing crisis in California is not going to be solved one city or one region at a time, and this is a crisis that requires a wide variety of tools, including tools such as SB 1069 that will facilitate creation of ADUs. In Walnut Creek, you should have as part of your Senate record a letter from a gentleman in Walnut Creek, a 27-year resident who wanted to move. His son had graduated from college. His son wanted to move back home into his own bedroom. They wanted some modicum of privacy for father and son, so he wanted to construct an exterior door and some drywall in the interior of his house. And just for the privilege of moving his son back into his old bedroom, that was going to be $25,000 plus in fees. This legislation actually supports local governments who want to encourage second units, but are unable to overcome vocal opponents who may not represent the views of the entire community and who certainly aren't considering the housing crisis here in California when they oppose accessory dwelling units and housing in general. This is important legislation that improves on existing law.
Excellent. Any further in support?
Good morning, Chairman Hertzberg, members of the committee. My name is Christina Klim. I work with AARP here in California. AARP surveys show that nearly 90% of the 50 and older population want to stay in their homes and communities as they age, where they have strong social networks and a sense of familiarity. Accessory dwelling units can be a valuable addition to a community's housing stock, while also helping older homeowners maintain their independence, provide additional income, and allow them to remain in the neighborhoods that they love. Many older adults, particularly older women, find themselves living alone on a fixed income in a home that is larger than they need or are able to take care of. It is imperative that we find ways to ensure that they have housing choices that best fit their needs. For these reasons, on behalf of 3.3 million AARP members in California, we ask for your support for SB 1069. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Anya Lawler on behalf of the Western Center on Law and Poverty and the California Rural Legal Assistance Foundation in support.
Thank you.
Good morning. Erin Niemela representing Bridge Housing and an affordable nonprofit, a housing developer, also in support. Thank you.
You're working a lot these days. That's good.
Good morning. Catherine Brandenburg representing the California Infill Federation in support.
Thank you so much.
Good morning. Nicolina Hernandez with Political Solutions on behalf of the Home Depot in support.
Thank you so much.
Morning, Senator Matt Regan with the Bay Area Council representing 275 of the Bay Area's largest employers in support.
Excellent. Thank you so much. You know, could you say something? Oh, sorry, go ahead, please.
I'm Carol Galante. I have laryngitis, so I'm not really going to speak, but I'm with the Turner Center for Housing Innovation at UC Berkeley. We've done a lot of work with our colleagues on this issue, and removing barriers to accessory dwelling units is a very important way of ensuring that we can house more people in our communities when, in fact, we've got a need for these smaller dwelling units for students, for seniors, and it's a very important part of the housing solution. Thank you.
So much. Sir.
John Pointer, California Senior Legislature.
Oh, great. Thank you, sir. Really
We support this bill.
excellent. Thank you. Any opposition?
Yeah.
No opposition. Good, please, have a seat. You can have a seat. You can give me a seat. You get to sit up here now. Thank you, guys.
Don't go far.
Don't go far.
Mr. Chair, members, Jason Ryan, League California Cities. Unfortunately, we are opposed to the measure. Our letter got a little bit late, so it's not reflected in the analysis, so please forgive me for that. We certainly agree with the intent of the author in this bill. Affordable housing is an issue that's gripping our cities. In fact, it is one of our 3 goals that we adopted this year at our board of directors to address the affordable housing crisis in California, so we've been very active on that front. Unfortunately, we don't think this measure is going to have a meaningful impact on the affordability of homes in our cities. Removing local discretion from local elected officials, we think is just a bad idea. There are other ways that we can help address this crisis without restricting a local government's ability to do what's best for their community and their neighborhoods. With that, we're opposed.
Well, let me ask you a question about this, your opposition. Because you have a series, I mean, you know, one of the challenges we face in this legislative branch of government and how we do business is we look at things in silos. But we have policies. Steinberg passed a thing talking about integrating transportation and how you plan. We got SB 350 that says we can't pollute the world, and we see that 40% of pollutants come from tailpipe emissions. We got the Williamson Act in the Agricultural Committee that says we shouldn't eat up more agricultural land to further expand. If this is an intelligent, and you guys are under pressure, and I think the most, quite frankly, you know, you're feeing people to death, $75,000 for someone to add this, $25,000. Come on. But the truth of the matter is, what your people are saying is, I ain't got no dough. You guys are cutting it off. I need the money, so I'm going to rip off everybody I can rip off on the system to be able to make the money. And you get what we did in driver's licenses, because we in the legislature do exactly the same thing, trying to make money. So the bottom line is, if we're going to be good policymakers, the notion is to integrate. What Mr. Wachowski's doing here, I understand it creates challenges for your people and gives them heartburn, but he's basically trying to be intelligent about being more efficient when you look at the penumbrum, if you will, of policies that we're talking about in every other committee. How do you respond to that beyond the fact that my guys want the money?
Right. I certainly, would not doubt the senator's intelligence. I mean, I think he's doing the right thing here. With regard to Steinberg's bill, SB 375, we were a very vocal supporter of that measure.
I know that, but being a supporter of that measure means you got to support Mr. Wachowski's measure. He implements that.
Yeah, we look at it a little bit differently. But with regard to the fees, as you know, Prop 26 limits our ability to charge fees. We can only charge what it actually costs us to perform that service.
So if there's $25,000 in fees for the Manat lawyer who just testified for adding on a bedroom for a kid who wants to come back,
Right.
Might as well pay off his student loans.
Well, part of that fee, and I don't know the fee exactly, but I'm assuming part of that fee could be a traffic alleviation fee. When you have more people moving into a community that wasn't designed for that dense population, there are going to be traffic impacts. There's going to be other impacts that need to be mitigated. Those fees are used to mitigate those impacts.
Yeah, well, it's okay. Any further opposition? Further opposition? We have a quorum. Let me just promote Mr. Bukowski, establish quorum. Secretary, call the roll.
Hertzberg?
Here.
Hertzberg present. Nguyen? Bell? Here. Bell present. Hernandez? Laura? Morlock? Morlock present. Havley? Here. Havley present.
We have a quorum. Questions for the members? Mr. Bell. Mr. Morlock.
Can you tell me who's opposed to this bill?
Well, the League of Cities has voiced their concern. I mean, I
was
think
kind of confused because they didn't come to our meeting yesterday when this bill was up. I was kind of confused why they were here today, but not at our meeting.
right. I mean, I think and they have a right when we go before Rules Committee and we go onto the Assembly side. I think the aged argument is that this is a local decision, that we're imposing, or actually, as I would say, we're removing some big barriers. We all have some challenges. This is not answer everything, but we're saying some of these barriers that you're putting up, we're going to remove them and let the homeowner, restore some of the responsibility and also the rights to the homeowners to develop their little castle. So
You've got a standing opposed position of all bills in this committee, Senator Bell.
Yeah.
No.
Well, we work real hard in my committee on affordable housing. We had a special hearing where we had all the experts in California come to our hearing on how to increase the supply of affordable housing in California, and just all kinds of different ways that we were able to do this. And so we're looking at this from a bigger strategic standpoint for California. And, you know, what it's going to take is some attitude change of the old ways of thinking. In my area, you know, Silicon Valley won't survive unless we have housing. That's what our CAOs said last week. They said the top issues for them are affordable housing and transportation. So for our businesses in Silicon Valley, which produces 20% of the revenue for the state of California for their taxes, I think that this is an important issue. So we need to have affordable housing in order to survive in Silicon Valley. So for me, this is a way we can provide affordable housing. This is it's not really a big ask for cities. It's a simple little ask that allows a little flexibility for a property owner to put a modest accessory unit and a little change, and does not change the fire codes or all the safety codes, the electrical codes. And believe me, I care about that a lot. Electrical codes and fire codes. When I was growing up in San Jose, we lost our house to a fire, so I care about electrical codes and fire codes. Our house burned down. 12 people didn't have a place to live. So I think that accessory units are a very important part of the big strategy of affordable housing. I mean, we had some very clear presentations in the Senate Housing and Transportation Committee at our special meeting, and I want to applaud Senator Rakowski for doing that and make a motion for this bill.
Excellent. So moved. Senator Morlock and then Senator Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Wachowski, 14 years ago, I did something I swore I wouldn't do again, and that is buy a home in a homeowners association.
Yeah.
But here I am. It's a standalone home, and I have to deal with architectural committee. And I'm just wondering, how are homeowners associations impacted by your legislation?
Well, they have to comply. They'll have to comply with the legislation as it is. I mean, if they have restrictions, typically they have restrictions on parking. But you know, as we know in suburbia, everybody parks in their driveway, right? And you're supposed to have a 2-car garage and go into the garage, but you park on the driveway. You might not be able to park on the street. There's some that allow you to park on the street, but you would have an absolute right to convert your garage into an accessory unit. Now, if that means that you have a car and the other person has a car and they're parked on the driveway, just like the 12 other people on your block that have 2 cars parked in the driveway, then that would be okay. If it forces you to either give up your car or to park illegally, then that's when they would step in. I don't know what each particular, you know, we allow by right if you have a lot and it's not completely covered or it doesn't meet the maximum covered area, that you have a right to do it. On a homeowners association, I don't know if there's other responsibilities and rights that would hinder that.
Approve any dwelling. So
right.
I just want to make sure that we're not stepping into something that creates a whole different problem that I don't get blowback from. I've got so many homeowners associations in Orange.
I think if I might add from my former current planning chief hat, it's often the case that homeowners associations or properties have CCNRs, which are binding legal agreements that affect what the homeowner can do. I think that whether it's a local zoning law or state law, those binding contracts are still binding on the homeowner. So although under state law, they might be able to convert a portion of their property to an accessory dwelling, if the CCNRs, which they signed as a contract, prevents that, I don't think a state law change can undo a signed binding agreement.
If they wanted to build this additional dwelling, they'd have to ask the homeowners association to change the bylaws or the contract.
Or, yeah, the contract would have to be amended to allow that.
About that.
Okay.
That's a separate contractual relationship.
Senator, thank you.
Senator Hernandez. Thank you, sir.
Senator Wieckowski, I apologize. I did get here late, so I haven't been able to hear all the testimony. But if you can just clarify. Well, first of all, I appreciate what you're doing. I think it's an innovative way of how we're going to address housing concerns. But I'm assuming that they still have to abide by all local ordinances. Is that correct, with regard to building standards? And I think I got the tail end of what Senator Bell said, that everything needs to be up to code.
Absolutely. That is not affecting that.
Okay, that's my number one question. And then I think a concern I have, and I think I maybe touched a little bit on by Senator Morlock, what about the parking situation with regard to what if there's multiple units within a block? Are cities going to have the authority to limit so that they can have sufficient parking so that we don't have streets that are just jam-packed and that, you know, there's no parking spaces? So how do we address the parking?
So let's look at the high-density parking. If there's a city that has a parking permits, that they give out certain parking permits to folks, and you build an accessory unit, you don't automatically get a parking permit. So you may have an accessory unit that you know, you have to walk to the bus or go to the transit. So there's no extra right that you get. If it's my town, it doesn't have any restrictions on parking, and I've got plenty of neighbors that have 4 or 5 cars, that 3 of them are on the street, then under this reduced barrier, the person would be able to park on the street. If they on tandem parking is allowed. Some cities have said that they won't allow tandem parking where you park one in the other. If your lot is long, you can get a credit for the spot or that parking spot on that one. Other things that I forgot on the parking?
I think that covers it. So parking is only also relieved in half a mile radius of transit. So if you're in a neighborhood that doesn't have permit parking, that doesn't have transit, and you're converting, say, your garage, which is where your parking is, then you would have to provide tandem parking on site. So it doesn't get rid of parking requirements altogether.
Right, assuming that the locality has an ordinance that restricts it. If they don't, then it's, you know.
So would it still allow local governments and local ordinances, or local governments to maintain their ordinances and base the number of additional units that they could bring into a city and figuring out the parking lots and structures and, I mean, parking situation?
Yeah, with this half hour or half mile from transit.
Okay,
If that's the.
Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Bit closer?
No,
Oh, I'm sorry. Senator Pavley had a question. I
I had a
apologize.
few comments. I get the point of trying to provide additional housing. Many communities have homeowners associations with very strict CC&Rs, so those of us who don't live in those will get perhaps a big enough change in the character of a neighborhood. And you know, they bring up some good concerns in here, that what seems like a good idea today to allow a second dwelling unit rented out to someone in your yard when you go to sell your property, is that a plus or a minus? How does it affect the privacy in your backyard with the changing people that are perhaps there, let alone the parking? So in some areas that works, topography and everything else, but I can see, let's take Los Angeles, the affluent hillside people, they won't be putting in extra units probably. So it's the people down on the flatlands, and you can change characters. That's what's happening. The characters of the neighborhood are changing. I'm for really pushing the envelope on people complying with the housing element, providing additional affordable housing in a thoughtful manner. But this may sound like a good idea, but I think it's going to have long-term consequences on people that have moved into relatively modest suburban neighborhoods with changing of owners of homes and the second dwelling unit and who lives there or not, whether it's parking or whether it's privacy, and people trying to share the same backyard. I don't know how that's going to work out. And in many cases, people, frankly, have multiple generations, adult children living in their home right now in a tent, you know, providing that additional housing. Not that we don't have a housing crisis, I'm not sure how the impacts affect all communities, and the loss of being able to pinpoint, you have to pinpoint where in your community this would be allowed.
Well, you're going to have, in more affluent areas, if people add on a second unit, they're probably for a relative, and they're not going to rent it out because they don't need the supplemental income. In areas that are more economically challenged, they will rent it out for supplemental income. The question is what I mentioned before you got here, just real briefly, and Mr. Burkowski close, is this larger issue. We're looking at climate change. We're looking at SB 375. We're looking at Williamson Act. We're looking at all these other circumstances. We're looking at folks that are requiring low-income housing in apartment buildings. What does that look like? What is the social relationship of having someone in your home and the impact there positively or negatively? I mean, there's a lot of factors. And I just think that what Mr. Wachowski's issue does, it really kind of, if you think it through, as Senator Bell was suggesting, in a strategic manner, it just raises just a ton of issues. And I think that these barriers that are up, I don't think you can have a big floodgate. It costs a lot of money to do some of this stuff, but in many instances, you've got cities who are strapped for cash and coming up with ways to put up barriers to slow it down, and or the kind of issues that often happen in communities, which is we don't want those people in the community, which is the challenge that we face all the time in dealing with low-income housing, and how do you make that work? I do understand the notion of the character of neighborhoods, but I mean, it just raises just an unbelievable. This could be a 3-day hearing in terms of kind of the array of issues it raises.
Well, the overall problem always is the way the post-Prop 13 and the low property tax cities have gotten so dependent on sales tax, there isn't enough residential.
You think we need tax reform?
I would say. But
You think we
there's
need
all
tax
sorts of
reform? Is that a motion for my bill?
No, I'm just trying to find
He is.
ways that cities who want to provide this option can do so. Those that do not, unless
Senator Bell, and then we'll let Senator Wachowski close because he's got to go chair here at committee.
Kind of things we're finding on a strategic level is the nature of housing has totally changed from, when 20, 30 years ago. So we have the Airbnb kind of situation, which reduces the supply of affordable housing. And we have more and more people that bought their house to raise their families, and then the families are gone now. And then they have large numbers of vacant bedrooms, if you want to say it that way. That's kind of the demographics that are changing. So if you want to look at it this way, in a lot of areas, there's less cars parked in front of the house or in the garage because the teenagers have left, the children have left, and then the house is now just 2 people. So it makes a lot of sense in a strategic way to work in a constructive manner, in a planned manner, to see how we can rethink the use of these resources that are out there in buildings that exist now, rather than keep talking about building affordable housing. That's kind of a constant thing I hear from other people, build affordable housing. Well, look what we did with affordable housing. We had all the housing bills last year vetoed, okay? They were all vetoed. We had a complete wipeout last year. All the bills the legislature did on housing were vetoed. Redevelopment housing was eliminated. We don't have that. Where are we talking about housing now? What do we have left? So we have a situation where the federal government isn't doing anything, the state government's not doing anything. Nobody, we have to rethink how we want to approach this problem. And I think working cooperatively in a planned way with cities to utilize the resources that we have to make it easier to do these conversions, I think is a good strategy that will help us. And we have to recognize all these parking issues and the overcrowding concepts and all those kinds of land use kind of things. But at the same time, the strategically, the need for housing is so bad right now that people are moving out of areas because they can't afford to live in those areas. People are moving out of San Jose, they're moving into Turlock and driving to San Jose every day. And our valley won't survive if that continues. It won't survive. We're gonna lose businesses, they're gonna leave.
Mr. Chair,
So
I will
that's
take
the concern, I think, the business people.
Yeah, I
have,
think that's
and
true.
It's kind of like, we have to do something, in a strategic way on this, and if we don't do it, I think we're gonna have economic problems in California.
I think you're correct. You want to close?
I'll take that as my close. This is a modest first step.
Okay, thank you, sir. Do you have a motion?
He moved already.
Moved by Senator Bell. Secretary, open the roll.
Hertzberg.
Aye.
Hertzberg, aye. Nguyen. Bell. Bell, aye. Hernandez. Hernandez, aye. Laura. Morlock. Havley.
Thank you for your patience, Mr. Chairman. We'll hold that open for you. Can I've got to leave for 5 minutes. I'm going to give this to Senator Bell. Senator Stone, I saw us here, is the next member that's up. This is file item number 6, SB 1416. File item number 6. I will pass the torch to a new generation of Americans. Senator Bell, I'll be back in 5 minutes.